Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. There is so much buzz about Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 right now. I, of course, am going to order it because of all the new updates for helicopters, even just for the option to be able to sling load. And since there was a bonus, might as well pre-order. And I'm really glad that I did, because I got a chance to download and check out the Canadair or Bombardier CL-415 Pelican, or as the firefighters that fly it call it, the Super Scooper. The CL-415 was based on the CL-215, which was designed back in the 60s, and I think it took its first flight in 1967. So they took the CL-15, which originally had some Pratt & Whitney radial engines on it, and they upgraded some with turbine conversions, which was the CL-15T, and that was so successful that they decided to incorporate that into the design as well as some upgrades, and they produced the CL-415. This was the first aircraft specifically designed to fight fires as a water bomber. It really does make a lot of sense that this aircraft would be a promotional item, being the flagship on the cover art and a main focus of the new simulator, the firefighting activities surrounding this aircraft. It makes perfect sense, and it's a great showcase piece. Just looking around the aircraft, the modeling is spectacular. There's really not an area that I've looked at that is a 2D texture instead of actually something being modeled, from each little detail of the components around the landing gear to the vortex generators on the control surfaces. It's just very, very well modeled. There's not one detail that has been missed. One of the nicer features is the mapping and texturing. When you move around the aircraft in different lighting conditions, it just has a really good sense of realism, and I think that's because they did such a good job with the different materials and textures. Tires actually look like tires. The rubber boots that are electrified on the propellers that actually heat the leading edge of the propeller to keep ice from forming, they look like rubber. It's really well done, and even the matte black paint on the top of the nose that's there for anti-glare and around the intakes of the engine inlets, it's so well done. You really get a sense of the different materials that the aircraft is, and it's got a nice sheen to it, so it's shiny, but then when you get closer to it in certain areas, you can see the detailing in the dirt and how it would actually be taken care of and maintained, right? So it's a very well kept and very well maintained aircraft, but you can tell that it's had a lot of use and it's textured accordingly. I was really amazed with the amount of interior modeling on an aircraft that you really wouldn't have any use for being in the interior in the sim, but it's so well done. Every area has just a minutia of detail. All of the hydraulic lines, all of the mechanical components like the push rods that you can find in certain areas, wire cable harnesses routing throughout the aircraft that are modeled and not just a texture thrown in, like all the way here to the back tail cone. It's impressive. They even modeled and textured the inside of the water tanks, which was pretty cool, but I didn't want to phase through the walls to show those in the video. Even the seats and the seat belts, they look so real. I mean, it would be great now that they've got soft body modeling in the sim to be able to see those seat belts move around as you're flying the aircraft, but it really comes down to what do you want to dedicate your processing power to. Definitely as computers get more advanced and become more powerful, we'll keep adding more and more things that the sim does to increase the realism and immersion. If this is the level of quality that we're getting with even one of the default level aircraft in the new sim, it's pretty impressive. It's very well done. Every angle that I looked at, everywhere that I moved around, I got the sense, even in the older sim, in the engine that it was not intended to run in, this aircraft looks and feels like a real aircraft. It didn't have any detail where like I thought I would be able to find an area and zoom in and be disappointed. I wasn't. Everywhere I looked at and every area that I went down into, the detail was there. It's very, very detailed in modeling and texturing and mapping. It's very good. It's very impressive, and I look forward to the other default aircraft in the sim if they're of this quality. I mean, this is pushing HPG Carinado level quality of modeling, texturing, and mapping. And I just love these shots, these scrolling panoramic views when you start the sim and with the telephone pole in the background and the mountains in the distance. I mean, it looks like it could have been a photograph. It's just, the level of detail has become incredible. Another area that's really well done is the sound, and here just listening to it start up, it took me back to when I worked line support on sitting on the ramp in front of a King Air listening to the Pratt & Whitney spool up. They even got the tick of the igniters. When I first loaded it, I took it to Ramona Air Attack Base and Kern Valley in Southern California. It's just one of my favorite places. The photogrammetry and scenery is great, and that area in Southern California would see a lot of these aircraft fighting fires. It was a really good pattern to fly at Ramona with this airplane, and it felt more alive, I think, than a lot of the other FS 2020 aircraft. So I know that the engine isn't any different, but maybe there's a little bit more to the aircraft itself, I'm not sure, but it felt more weighty, especially when coming in for a landing as it was slowing down. It definitely had that more sluggish, slow to react feeling. And in different phases of flight, it felt different, which is really good. You don't feel that in all the default aircraft. So after my initial load, I decided that I wanted to get a little preview of what Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 was really going to be like. So I decided to go to Klagenfurt in Austria. Had a much larger lake near the airport to practice on as well. And put it through its paces. Fly it around and do some water pickups and some water drops. And just see how it flew in the updated scenery area in Austria. So Klagenfurt is LOWK, that's Lima Oscar Whiskey Kilo, is the ICAO code. So if anybody wants to fly there as well, the scenery is beautiful. So it's not photogrammetry, but it's the newest technology, right, for doing the AI upgrade of the aerial imagery or satellite imagery. So this is some of the best looking scenery, and it's, like I said, it's not photogrammetry, it's aerial imagery or satellite imagery and autogen. So it looks very good. So this here, this flight flying around is kind of a little bit of a preview of what Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 is going to be like in the flagship or default firefighter, the CL-415, around the latest scenery in Austria. One of my favorite things about this as a default aircraft is the way that it is dynamic on the suspension. It's not just on rails. You can feel the weight shifting around. The nose dips when you hit the brakes. It's very cool. One of the things that I really hope they work on for 2024 is the replay functionality. It's kind of hit or miss what does and doesn't show correctly in the replay. Most of this video you'll see that the water doors are open, which they weren't when I was flying, but I left them open on the ramp right before I played the replay, so that's the position that they were in. It's kind of funny what works with the replay and what doesn't. Things in the cockpit don't show correctly, like the landing gear lever is not in the correct position. Sometimes the water doors show correctly and other times they don't. I'm not sure that the engine gauges are reading correctly, but it appears that the airspeed indicator is correct to what was happening when I was flying, but again, like, it's hit or miss with the replay. was nice in this area to have a much larger lake to work with. I found that it was a little bit more difficult to pick up water than I had originally thought it would be. Maybe it's just because I don't know the plane that well. Again, it would be pretty cool to have someone being able to sit next to you to teach you, so I'm kind of excited to see how the career mode is actually going to work in 2024. I know that a lot of people seem to be upset about some of the requirements, and from a gaming standpoint, I can kind of understand that. From a simming standpoint, I can sort of see it, because there's a lot of people that have a lot of experience. From an actual real-world perspective as a pilot, I kind of like it. So I want to see how it's implemented and really base my opinions after I see what it does. But at no time would you, as a licensed pilot, ever get into an aircraft that you don't know and you're not familiar with and take off and fly it. It's just not safe. Every aircraft has little intricacies, quirks, idiosyncrasies, little things that it's always good to have a seasoned, experienced pilot show you and familiarize you with the aircraft. It's much safer, and you're not going to run into things that you don't expect. So from that aspect, yes, it would be nice to be able to take a check ride or be able to do those certifications. Maybe not have to fly every training mission if you do have experience in some areas, but even an experienced pilot in the real world wouldn't show up on a job and say, hey, I've got 2,000 hours and I've got experience in this job and I'm going to go do it. The company that would be looking to hire you would say, oh yeah, that's great and all, and we believe you, but why don't you go ahead and take a ride with our chief pilot and he'll assess you. Or he or she, they'll assess you. That's how it actually goes in the real world aviation. So the idea that you would have to go do a little bit of training and take a check ride is actually pretty true and realistic to how things would go for you in aviation. So again, like with this aircraft, I watched a couple of shows or documentaries on YouTube of the guys at Bridger Aerospace in Montana that fly these aircraft, and they were talking about using the scoops and how they do the scoop, and they said that they scoop at 90 and that you can actually feel it drag when the scoops hit the water. So, and I did notice that they deploy the scoops before touching down. You don't wait to touch down and then deploy the scoops. So you deploy the scoops and then touch down. That was just something that I picked up from those videos, but those guys weren't really trying to teach anyone anything. They were just showing off their aircraft for a documentary. So it would be really great to have an experienced pilot in the seat next to you saying, okay, this is how you do this procedure. You want your throttle in this range. We're going to descend at this speed, and we're going to try to touch down and maintain, whatever the procedure is to learn how to operate this aircraft efficiently. Would be very beneficial to have an experienced pilot run you through those exercises. So with this one, I found that it did scoop best at 90 knots indicated airspeed. It was hard to get it down onto the surface going faster than that. If I was above 90, if I was around 100 knots, it would skip off the surface, and really had a hard time getting it to come down smoothly. And in fact, I had my crash detection enabled, and a couple of times it crashed, impacting the water, skipping, bouncing up and down off the water. So obviously you can overstress the aircraft if you don't do it correctly, but at about 90 knots, if I touched down at 90 knots, it would stay consistent and I could scoop the water up. If I got below 70 knots, it stopped scooping water, so there is obviously a range that you need to stay in. That's one of the other items with the replay that didn't seem to work properly. When I would pick up water in the replay, it just dumped the water the whole time from where I picked it up until I dropped it, in wherever in sequence that I dropped it. It was really kind of amusing, but at least I was able to get a couple of good shots of it showing the drop. It's frustrating for me to not have these replays because I like to assess my performance, not only to look at videos and see if I had a nice landing that I buttered or not, but it's nice to be able to go back and look and see what you did at what time to help you improve aspects of your flying. Like I would be able to look at this and see if I did something at the wrong time when I was trying to do a water pickup, if maybe I could help myself improve what I'm doing. It's kind of nice to be able to go back and replay because you don't have that instructor sitting next to you watching what you're doing going, hey, don't do that, or maybe try this a little bit sooner, or wait to do this step. My dog has a lot to say for this video, so we'll see if we can pick up her talking in the background. It is such a pretty model, very beautifully done. It's a ton of fun to look at in the replay. There's some definite areas where there's custom models in this scenery, but it's pretty much all autogen. You can tell by looking at the houses what type of scenery this is. And you can tell the difference too, because in the photogrammetry areas, what really brings that to life and makes it realistic is the ground clutter, right? The things that people keep in their backyard, right? Like trampolines or pole barns or tractors, things sitting around. People are kind of messy, and that's normal and it's okay, but having those things in the world, or like junkyards or parking lots, because cars aren't ever aligned perfectly straight, things are always a little bit off. So having those things like that is what really makes the scenery look real. And in this mix and around this area, you can see it's done a really good job. The AI has got it pretty good, and it's populating the buildings and the vegetation very well. And in the areas where there would be that little bit of ground clutter, it's leaving the satellite imagery in resolution enough that it looks real. It's good. I'm really excited for 2024 to have areas where the scenery looks this good, and also be able to fly down and like I said, I'm a helicopter pilot. I fly helicopters mostly, but to be able to fly down and have my rotor wash affect things, that's one of the other things I'm really looking forward to, as well as firefighting. Here you can see what I was talking about as far as skipping across the surface. And another thing that was kind of interesting in watching some of the videos about the new simulator coming out, but Seb was talking about the actual difference between the graphical waves and the simulated waves in the current sim. And he said that when the wind was at about 5 knots, it kind of matched, but most other times it really didn't. The water is just a pretty picture, and it's not actually what's simulated as far as contact. So I'm really looking forward to the upgraded water physics. It was kind of neat watching some of the videos of people flying this in 2024 and watching things like as it slowed down and as they cut the throttle, the airplane shifted forward and sank down in the water, and it looked very good. So I'm curious to see how it's going to work with seaplanes and if we can actually get up on step. Either way, it was pretty cool, the water interactions. I had a lot of fun simulating drops. I can't wait until there's actual fires with turbulence and thermals and smoke and everything to actually experience in the sim. It's going to be a ton of fun. But I really did enjoy flying this and doing the water landings and practicing what it might possibly be like to fly circuits with this water tanker back and forth between a drop location and a lake or a water source to be able to fill up. And one of the other cool things I liked about the water contact was the sound again. It's the little details, right? Aircraft are rickety. I guess rickety is not the right word because that makes it seem like they're about to fall apart, but they shake, they vibrate, things move. I mean, helicopters too especially, but that's one of the things about the simulator that's kind of the hardest to relate. It's kind of sterile. It's not very lively in the sim. It's much more alive, it's much more dynamic when you're actually in the airplane. As you're going down the runway, you can feel the yaw shift in the seat as the control surfaces, especially the vertical surface, starts to have an impact on how the aircraft performs. It shakes a lot. It makes noise. That's one of those things like FS Realistic brings to the table that it really helps. But this airplane, it did it very well. When you hit the water, that noise of what it's like to actually have the floats or have the hull in the water, and it's shaking and vibrating the airplane as you're skimming across the surface. It was very immersive. I cannot get over these views in these areas, and I'm just so looking forward to the new simulator and the upgrades that it brings to the scenery. It really is a nice performing and nice handling aircraft. It's smooth and easy to fly. It really does fly like it's a lot smaller than it actually is, but you can feel the weight. It's kind of hard to describe because it is very agile, but I wouldn't call it nimble. So it's a good experience. It felt really real in VR, being in the cockpit. And that's why I want to get some of this stuff with the replay sorted out, because I want to be able to have and provide these videos and these views and not be subject to the limitations of flying in VR. And I also want to enjoy the simulator in VR. So it's kind of a catch-22, I guess, and limitations of what I want to bring to these videos and what I would like to share as far as passion in flight simming, passion in real aviation, as I start bringing more content and doing the YouTube thing more. I really want to show the aircraft in the way that I want to see them, because I love airplanes and I love helicopters. It really is a well put together model of this aircraft. Not everything is perfect. Some of the electrical system stuff was a little off. It's not clear in the documentation, although there really is no documentation, but the checklists in the airplane don't have every step for every procedure. And some things I kind of figured out on my own, and I'm hoping that there's more documentation for the 2024 version and in the sim, and I'm not going to assess like whether everything is working correctly or not, because this airplane wasn't built for this sim. So the fact that it's working as well as it is in the older sim, it's pretty cool, and that we got to have it a little bit early and have a little preview of what Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 is going to offer. That was pretty nice of them to put that effort in, because they didn't have to do that for us. You know, that's kind of a nice little incentive for loyalty and customer loyalty, I think. So that was pretty cool of the devs, and I appreciate it. And I'm having a lot of fun with this aircraft right now, and it's really satisfying my itch to be getting into the new simulator that I can't wait for. So I hope everybody enjoyed the video. I hope everybody's as excited and looking forward to the new simulator as I am, and the new content that we can bring. Thanks for watching. Be safe, be kind, and I'll see you in the next video.